Shortstop is priority number one for the Atlanta Braves this offseason, but they probably wouldn't even be in this predicament had they been a little bit more open to bringing back Dansby Swanson. We'll discuss all of that on today's episode of a Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We're over 15,000 subscribers on YouTube now, so thank you so much for your support there. You can help others find us on YouTube. Just hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. And on the audio side, you can help out as well. Just leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Braves your very first listen of each and every day. Today's episode, we're going to look at some of AA's comments from the weekend, talking about the managerial search, the priority for the offseason. We're also going to get into a discussion on Dansby Swanson, and maybe the Braves shouldn't even be in this predicament where they are, where the shortstop is such a big problem for them. We'll readdress that offseason as well. And we'll talk about Chipper's comments too. Busy weekend of comments, and Chipper sounds like he's ready to coach again. So let's make it happen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Well, Alex Anthopoulos addressed the media over the weekend, and several interesting comments came out of that. And we'll get to a lot of those more in the second segment. But one of the comments talked about shortstop and that it is priority number one. He was pretty open about the fact that they really want to have Ha-Seong Kim stick around, which doesn't help negotiations when they know that that's really your only option. It's basically Kim or bust. And Alex knows that. Kim knows that. And his agent, Scott Boras, knows that as well. But this kind of led to a bigger question. It's something that really was brought up the other week. I made a comment about the fact that I wish I liked Dansby Swanson because it is so much fun to watch him play defense, and had several people after that, ask, why do you not like Dansby anymore? And somebody wanted me to do a deeper dive on Dansby. And I'll say this, my comments about not liking Dansby anymore probably need to let that go. But I didn't love the comments after he left. But I was always one of the biggest supporters for Dansby Swanson. Even before his big breakout 2022 season, I loved his leadership. I loved the way that he played defense. And I've always been a huge supporter of Dansby's. And I wanted the Braves to bring him back at the right price. But it obviously didn't happen. So I want to go back and break all that down and how everything unfolded, because the more I think back at it now and where we are now with the shortstop position, I think this might be one of the biggest failures of Alex Anthopoulos when we talk about the big three of Freddie Freeman, Dansby Swanson, Max Fried, who have since gone in free agency. I think not bringing Dansby back is probably the biggest miss so far. So going back to that year, that offseason, Mark Bowman reported that the Braves offered Dansby Swanson 6 years, $100 million in that summer before the offseason, and never increased their offer after that, despite Dansby taking the initiative and calling and trying to work with the Braves front office, I assume Alex Anthopoulos, to make something happen. And that right there, give Dansby a lot of credit. He wanted to stay around. He wanted to be in Atlanta. He wanted to be a Brave, and he was willing to take less money for that to happen, but the Braves just never budged off their initial offer to Dansby Swanson. So I think you got to give him a lot of credit for that. Had Freddie picked up the phone, I say this all the time, had Freddie picked up the phone and called Alex, he'd still be a Brave today. So I give, and maybe Dansby learned that lesson from Freddie, but Dansby was, he was aggressive. He wanted to stay in Atlanta, and he tried what he could. In the end, the Cubs offered him $177 million. And I don't know how many of you are going to just turn down $77 million more dollars, even if where you want to be. And I know some people are going to say, 100, what's the difference between 100 million and 177 million? That's a big difference. It really, really is. And it's at that point, it's not so much just about the money. It's okay. Here I am trying my hardest to stay with this team where I want to be. And here I got another team, and they just don't value me as much as this other team is. And at some point, it becomes a little bit of a value and a pride thing where you haven't budged on this number since the summer. I got a team over here that's willing to pay me $177 million. They obviously very much value me and think I'm important. And I get the sense and the feeling from you that you don't. And I feel like even more so than the difference in the money, and this is just my opinion from 1,000-foot view, that may be even more of what it came down to Dansby, which kind of makes sense with his comments afterwards and the way that he has kind of handled things afterwards. I mean, he seemed hurt. And I didn't like the comment about him saying Atlanta fans, don't take sports as big of a deal as Chicago sports fans. Even if that's true, how the Atlanta fan base is going to take it. You're part of the Atlanta fan base. He even says he's still a Hawks and a Falcons fan. You just don't say that, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. And then some of his comments and attitude, since then, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But, when I take a step back and think about it, those feelings might be kind of warranted for a franchise that you gave so much to, you tried so hard to work with to be there. And like I said, at the end of the day, it was probably just hurt feelings more than anything, that here is a team that's clearly values me and values me a lot to offer me $177 million, which is a big overpay. I was never on board with coming anywhere close to that much. That contract's never going to be worth what it is. But for the team to not even just be willing to budge and say, hey, can you come up a little bit? No. Hey, can you get a little bit closer to this? No. We're sticking with what we initially offered you back in the summer. At some point, feelings are going to get hurt. And I think that's ultimately what it came down to between Dansby and the Braves. But there's no question he wanted to come back and was willing to take less to come back and be with the Braves. But in no way, like I said, one, are you going to turn down $77 million more dollars? And we don't know what other teams were offering him too. We just know what the Braves, apparently or allegedly, what was reported was $100 million was the highest offer that the Braves ever got to. And we'll never know how close the Braves would have had to get. Would Dansby have done it for $120 million? Would he have done it for $150 million? I think that probably would have been a bit too much for me, but I think I said at that time I'd be willing to go as high as $120 million. And again, that's still a wide gap between 120 and 177. But, again, maybe just the Braves' willingness to come off of that original number a little bit shows Dansby a little bit something. Maybe he is willing to take, that much to stay in Atlanta where he wanted to be. But he didn't. The Braves didn't. And now you're in this big predicament. And so I want to continue this conversation about what we've seen the last 3 years and why the Braves are at this point where they are so desperate to find a shortstop, and they are praying that Ha-Seong Kim picks up a $16 million team option. We'll continue that discussion here next. The NFL season is here, as are the MLB playoffs, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel allows you to bet the way you like with player props, building same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game a little bit more exciting, whether you're watching your team, keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, or you're just hate watching, wanting to see those Yankees lose, those Phillies lose, maybe the Dodgers. That's what you're doing right now. You can see all of those odds out there at FanDuel.com. They have odds for each game, World Series odds right now. The Yankees are still the clear favorite, but the Phillies have dropped down dramatically after that game one loss. And the Blue Jays, who have been crushing the Yankees right now, have the second best odds behind the Dodgers to win the World Series. Again, you can see all that there at FanDuel.com. Also, please make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. Are you ready? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Thank you as always, making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. They'll be talking about that beat down by the Blue Jays over the Yankees and everything else happening around the postseason. The guys, will be game night. If you're tired of just hearing me and you want to hear more of Lindsey, obviously he has his own content that he does, but he's also part of MLB Game Night, so you can check that out as well. They'll get you caught up with each of the action happening each and every night through the postseason. Let me get back into this discussion, though, of where the Braves currently stand at the shortstop position and why not maybe being a little bit more open to bringing back Dansby Swanson has put you in a big hole. And let's just be honest, the Braves have been struggling at shortstop ever since he left. And at first, the beginning of 2023, it looked like the Braves made absolutely the right decision. Orlando Arcia, through July of that season, had a 117 WRC plus. It looked like the Braves were better off at shortstop without Dansby Swanson, with the way that Arcia swung it in the first half of that season, was playing above average defensively. But then reality struck for Orlando Arcia, and since June 1st of 2023 through April of 2025, he had a 73 WRC plus. And of 33 qualified shortstops since the 2023 season, and this includes his hot stretch at the beginning of 2023, he ranks next to last in WRC plus among those 33 qualified shortstops. So, and then when you consider this past season when Nick Allen, the Braves had the worst qualified hitter in baseball, it has been a rough stretch for the Atlanta Braves at the shortstop position offensively. Defensively, like I said, Arcia, he was above average. His first couple of years there kind of tailed off in 2024 a little bit. Nick Allen was outstanding this past year. They've been great defensively, but offense has been a real struggle for the Braves at shortstop since Dansby Swanson left. And when you look at the two teams, when you compare the Cubs and the Braves, and you compare F4 at the shortstop position between those two teams since 2023, the Braves ranked 27th in all of baseball. It's 30 teams. They ranked 27th. And the Cubs ranked 9th. So a huge, huge gap there. And it's not like Dansby Swanson has necessarily been this huge offensive plus. You look at his 3 seasons since going over to the Cubs, played 147 games that first year, a 105 WRC plus, but 4.8 F4. Next season, 2024, 149 games, 97 WRC plus, 4.2 F4. And then this past season, 159 games, 99 WRC plus, 3.3 F4. So again, not like he's been amazing offensively, but you would take 100 WRC plus, which is average compared to what you've been getting, not to mention the defense that you get that you've already seen on display in this postseason. Was truly, truly incredible in that wild card series. Mike Schilt of the Padres saying they basically lost because of Dansby Swanson's defense. It was that good in that series, and not to mention the leadership that Dansby Swanson brought that this team has clearly been lacking with the losses of him and Freeman. So there was just so much that he brought to the table that you have been missing these last 3 years. And again, I was fine with not giving him $177 million. I'm just making the point that you maybe could have done a little bit more to not put yourself in this place that you've been in with the shortstop position where you are. It is Ha-Seong Kim or bust this offseason, unless Alex has something up his sleeve that we don't know about. And here's the issue. We talk about the losses of Freddie Freeman, Dansby Swanson, and Max Fried. Those are the big ones you've lost to free agency over the last several years. With Freddie Freeman, you were quick to have a replacement in hand. You couldn't wait on a response from Freddie Freeman and his agent, which his agent gave him an ultimatum, understand all that. But you were so quick to move. And it was a short time frame. Sorry, I don't like to relive this every time I have to talk about it, but some people don't know, so I try to give the details on it. But it was, obviously you had the lockout and everything. So it was a short time frame. Everything kind of happened quick. Freddie Freeman's agent gave Alex an ultimatum. Alex wasn't going to meet those demands, and so he felt like he had to pivot quickly before he lost leverage and lost potential replacement in Matt Olson. But again, the point being, you knew you wanted to move quickly because you knew what the loss of Freddie Freeman meant, and you wanted to have somebody to replace him quickly. And you did. And Matt Olson. Matt Olson's been fantastic, especially on the field. He's been fantastic for the Atlanta Braves. With Max Fried, you didn't necessarily replace him, Now, part of that was obviously the Braves wanted to reset the tax this last offseason. You also were getting back Spencer Strider. And I felt like even with the loss of Max Fried, the rotation was still in a pretty good spot because you had Strider coming back, you had Sale, you had Schwellenbach. I still felt like without Max Fried, had not everybody gotten injured, the rotation would have been good, would have been really good. I think if all three of those guys, would have been healthy this season, not to mention Ronaldo, Grant Holmes, I think the starting rotation would have been fine without Max Fried. I still would have liked the Braves to get some more depth for the rotation to prepare for injuries that were likely to come. But again, I didn't think replacing Max Fried was essential. But replacing Freddie Freeman, you felt was essential, and you made sure that you went out and got a replacement. You didn't do that with Dansby Swanson and at the shortstop position, which, in my biased opinion, I think is one of the most important positions on the field, both for, a field general playing a demanding defensive spot and also generally somebody that is a leader on your team. I think it's very important to have a strong leading type of shortstop on your team. And you said, well, we got Orlando Arcia, we got Vaughn Grissom, we'll just be fine there. You knew you weren't going to pay Trey Turner. You knew you weren't going to pay Carlos Correa. You knew you weren't going to pay Xander Bogaerts. You knew you weren't going to pay Willy Adames, some of the big shortstop free agents that have come available since Dansby Swanson left. And that was a big, shortstop free agency year when Dansby left. It was Dansby, Bogaerts, Correa, Turner, all were in that same free agent class. And Dansby still got $177 million. And really the only other thing since that has been Willy Adames this past offseason, and you didn't pay for that. So that's where kind of my frustration goes. And I get this. There's, Dansby's kind of been a divisive figure amongst Atlanta Braves fans since he, was here. He's had the high expectations, being a top draft pick, never really lived up to that offensively until that 2022 season. But even despite all that, I loved Dansby because I loved his leadership. I love watching him play defense. His instincts, his IQ are just off the charts. And it's so fun to watch that. And I just think my biggest complaint in this is that, okay, you didn't want to spend $177 million to get Dansby or whatever number it would have taken to get him to stay in Atlanta. But why weren't you so eager? Why weren't you so focused on replacing him with something substantial? Why were your only fallback options for losing Dansby Swanson, Orlando Arcia, and Vaughn Grissom? And you look at it internally, those were your options. And at that point, you probably had a fairly good idea that Vaughn Grissom wasn't going to be it at shortstop because remember, he came into spring training that year. He definitely out-hit Orlando Arcia that spring training. I thought he made strides defensively, but it was clear that, he wasn't going to be anything great there. And you still gave Arcia the job. And then obviously, later, next offseason, you traded Vaughn Grissom. So you pretty much knew it was Orlando Arcia or bust at that point. And again, they were looking very smart at the beginning of 2023, but after that, with the second half of 2023, you had to know. And then, going into this past offseason, you had to know, and you replaced Orlando Arcia in the first month of the season. It's frustrating to me that you weren't willing to budge at all on your offer for Dansby Swanson. And again, I'm not trying to paint the picture that I think Dansby Swanson is the greatest player. I mean, overall, he's probably a mid-tier type of shortstop in the game. But would you have taken that the last 3 years? Wouldn't you have rather had that the last 3 years, along with his leadership and being a huge clubhouse presence for that team? Wouldn't you have rather had that than what you've had? And I just, again, to kind of bring it all back, it's the fact that there was no urgency from Alex Anthopoulos to replace a significant loss. You had to replace Freddie Freeman. You knew that. And it's a franchise icon. If you were going to lose a player like that, you had to get somebody quickly to replace him. But you didn't have that same urgency and feeling of Dansby Swanson, who I think was underrated as a Brave. Like I said, it was very decisive amongst Braves fans if Dansby Swanson was actually a net positive. I always felt that he was, even before his big offensive breakout. I think a lot of fans are seeing that now, that you would have much rather had Dansby Swanson these past 3 years than what you've run out there. And if you weren't going to bring him back, you needed to go out and find something substantial to replace him. And here we are, three seasons later. We finished 3 seasons later. We're going to another 4 off seasons later. And you are basically sitting here hoping, wishing that Ha-Seong Kim picks up a $16 million player option. And let's not act like Ha-Seong Kim is one of the best shortstops in baseball either. He's more so in that middling pack area too. We'll talk more about Ha-Seong Kim maybe later this week and break down what we saw from him and how much value he actually brings to the team. But let's not act like he's a top tier shortstop either. And you are sitting here hoping that he picks up a $16 million player option, because if he doesn't, you're looking at another year of Nick Allen. Like I said, they're just, maybe you go get Willie Castro. Is he an everyday shortstop? I don't see a lot of teams out there that are really eager to trade a quality shortstop with years of control, young quality shortstop. Those just don't happen very often. They don't become available very often. And so if Ha-Seong Kim doesn't come back, or you're not able to work out some sort of extension with him, you're in a really, really tough spot at shortstop. And again, we'll talk about it later in the week when we break down Ha-Seong Kim. Even bringing him back, I still have some question marks about him going forward with the season that he just had and the health injuries the injuries that he's had. I got some questions about Ha-Seong Kim himself, but that's really your best option right now, because you haven't done anything the past 3 off seasons to address losing somebody that I thought was a very vital piece of your team. So again, let me know your thoughts on that. I didn't really mean to bring up old wounds, but a lot of people have been asking for us to go back over that again. And I think it's on point with where we are right now at the shortstop position. I think it's worth going back and looking at it with that frame of mind, that if you were going to let Dansby go and not address it, and now you here you are 3 years later, and you're still searching for somebody at the shortstop spot. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments section below. Again, I think it's a very interesting conversation. So really excited to hear what some of you have to say on that. We'll get into some of Alex Anthopoulos' other comments here next, and the other priorities for this offseason. Was it really Snit's decision to step down? He addressed that very frankly, and we'll get into Chipper's comments as well about him perhaps coming back to coach. We'll get into all that here next. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Me and my wife, we just put the October budget together the other day, and we did it right there on Monarch Money. It was simple, it was quick, it was painless, and now we're on the same page. We know what we have to spend going into the month of October. It's been great for our relationship. Getting on the same page financially has been very, very helpful for us, and it can be helpful for you as well. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONMLB. Well, Alex Anthopoulos had some other interesting comments this past weekend. And one thing is that he confirmed that the decision to step down was absolutely Brian Snitker's decision, and that if he wanted to come back and manage again, he would have. It was also revealed in this that Snitker, 3 years ago in January of 2023, he signed an 8-year contract with 3 years to manage and 5 years to work as an advisor, but said at that time it was just announced as a 3-year deal, or he didn't say that, but that's the way it came across to us. It was a 3-year deal, and we didn't really know about the other 5 years as an advisor, but he said that was, Snitker's decision to reveal that or not. Look, I wish, not just with Alex Anthopoulos, I wish in media in general, we could just take people at their word. And I'm usually very trusting, and I very much try to do that. But when when you've been lied to your face before so many times by certain people, it's really hard to believe what they say. But I'm gonna ultimately believe Alex in what he says here, and that was the case. But in my mind, I'll be honest, it's hard to believe that. But that's what Alex said, and so again, that's what we're going to believe, that it was absolutely Snitker's decision, and that if he wanted to come back next year, that he would have, that AA wouldn't have stopped that. So we'll leave it at that. And that at least as of this past Saturday, Alex said that they hadn't even put a list together of potential candidates or reached out to anyone yet. Again, very hard for me to believe that. And I honestly hope he's lying there. I hope you at least, and maybe he hadn't put pen to paper yet, but I hope there have at least been discussions of, if Snit steps away, who are some names that we could be looking at. I think that would be bad work as a general manager if you weren't at least prepping for that possibility. But again, that's what AA said, so we'll believe that. And then AA said it doesn't have to be someone in the lines of Snitker and Bobby Cox, essentially an organizational man, hopefully meaning that they'll cast a wide net. That I hope is truthful, because really that's been their best two hires. When you think about it, going from Freddie Gonzalez, who was familiar with the Braves, been part of the organization. Brian Snitker obviously been part of the organization for forever now. And it's not that I don't love what the Braves have, and I don't love the Braves tradition, way, whatever you want to call it. I just think for where this team is at right now, I would not mind somebody coming from outside of the organization. I would not mind a fresh voice to kind of bring some energy to what's honestly become a pretty stale team at the moment. I mean, let's be honest. These past 2 years, it has been very stale. And I would not be upset for them to bring somebody outside of the organization. I know David Ross is a name that a lot of people will talk about because he has been in the Rays organization, and that's fine. But I just hope that they do cast that wide net, that they're just not like, oh, Walt Weiss, it's your job. You step into this role. I really do hope that they search, deep and wide. Got Bible songs coming into my head right now, but that is my hope. So I choose to believe Alex on that one. And then he also mentioned that bullpen and starting rotation were areas they hope to upgrade this offseason. He did go on to later say that right-handed hitting outfielder is down the priority list, but it's certainly behind those other three. And again, that's what I wanted to hear. I'd like to hear that getting another big outfield bat is not. I do think the other three need to be in front of it, but I hope it clearly is a priority instead of it's just kind of down the list. If it happens, it happens, which is the sense you kind of get when he was talking about it. But I do agree with that priority list. I do think it is shortstop. I think it is starting pitching. I'd almost put bullpen ahead of starting pitching, but shortstop, bullpen, starting pitching, outfield bat. I think those are the big needs going into the offseason. So good to hear him, kind of say that and confirm what we've already talked about. And then the other big comments from the weekend, Chipper Jones, who was on 680 The Fan, I believe last Friday, was asked about managing. And I actually I think this question came on the mailbag episode last week. Somebody asked me about Chipper wanting to manage. And my comment then was, I don't think the discussion's ever really been about Chipper managing, but more so him being the hitting coach. But they did ask him about managing, and he said he didn't think that's for him. And that's kind of always been my thought too. I've never seen Chipper as a manager, but strictly just as a hitting coach. And that's exactly what Chipper said. He doesn't see himself as a manager, doesn't think he would fit in that role, but he did say that he could see himself being potentially a good hitting coach. And he did say that he got the okay from the family if that's something he wanted to do. And if he got the okay from the family, and if it's something that Chipper wants to do, again, I've been applauding him for wanting to spend time with the family. I think that's admirable, and I absolutely think he should do that. But if he is to the point now where I've had enough of the family, I'm ready to go back to work and coach, whatever the case may be, and his family's okayed it, and he wants to do it, Chipper should have been announced yesterday, 2 days ago, whenever these comments came out. Whenever he first had that feeling of, hey, I want to be the hitting coach, Chipper should be given the job. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, they'll want to get the manager first, but I kind of joked on social media and said the new qualification for a new manager is one that will take on Chipper Jones as the hitting coach or convince Chipper to be the hitting coach. I do think he would be a great hitting coach. We've heard in the past with guys on the Braves that when he's worked with them that they've been able to turn things around. Even Michael Harris is part of his turnaround this year. You credit to Chipper Jones. He's worked with Profar before as a switch hitter and see some of the things that he was able to do this year. I do think Chipper would be a good hitting coach and a good fit for what this team needs, especially if they're going back to that, because Chipper has that old school philosophy too of not wanting to strike out, put the ball in play, do the little things. That is certainly Chipper's MO. And if that's the direction this team's wanting to go offensively, he could definitely help. So we'll see what becomes of it. Obviously, you want to find the new manager first, but I would not be surprised if Chipper now has gotten the okay and he's ready to do it, that we see Chipper as the Braves hitting coach as soon as next year. So we'll see what happens with that the rest of this offseason. We'll see what happens with the managerial search this week. We'll be talking a lot about that. As I said, we'll dive deeper into Ha-Seong Kim. And did we actually see enough? How much value is there in bringing back Ha-Seong Kim? Is it just because he's the only option, or is he actually a really good option? We'll discuss that later this week. To quick postseason update, the Dodgers came back to beat the Phillies the other night. The Brewers crushed the Cubs in their first game. While I'm recording right now, the Blue Jays are crushing the Yankees, about to go up 2-0 in that series. And then you also got the Mariners as well in that series. That's happening on Sunday night. So before I'm recording this episode, or after I'm recording this episode, rather. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Locked On Braves. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. And make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And we will talk to you next time.